Hello everyone, today I will continue sharing with you the story of the single mother, Tiểu San. I hope you enjoy watching the video. Since the day Tiểu San opened that small classroom, her life seemed to gain a new rhythm of breath. At first, there were only a few old desks and chairs, a handful of notebooks borrowed from acquaintances, and simple lessons held in a small room. Yet the more she became involved, the more Tiểu San realized that the meaning of what she was doing went far beyond her original expectations. Every eager pair of eyes holding a pencil for the first time, every shy smile when the children slowly spelled out their very first words, warmed her heart. Some children came to class wearing shirts frayed at the shoulders, sandals worn thin at the heels, but their eyes lit up in a remarkable way when they were called by name, listened to, and taught how to read and write. Tiểu San understood that, for many of them, this small classroom was not just a place to learn letters, but a place where they were made to believe they deserved a better future. Those simple moments became the motivation that carried Tiểu San forward each day. She thought of the children when she woke up, thought of the lessons she needed to prepare, and wondered how she could keep them from dropping out because of poverty. There were moments of exhaustion and pressure, but every time she saw the children sitting attentively in class, she reminded herself that she had to keep trying even harder. Tiểu San began to actively visit each family, patiently talking with the children's parents and explaining that attending class, even just a few sessions a week, could open a different door for their children. She encouraged the children not to be afraid of long distances or hardship, because in that classroom there would always be someone waiting for them, ready to teach and walk alongside them. Gradually, the small classroom became more than just Tiểu San's personal dream, it turned into a shared hope for many underprivileged children. And through each quiet step she took, Tiểu San understood that even though her contribution might be very small, with enough perseverance and love, the letters learned today could one day lead these children toward a brighter tomorrow. Tiểu San's charity classroom slowly ceased to be a small story confined to a poor neighborhood by the roadside. At first, it spread only through whispered conversations among parents whose children could not attend school regularly. Then, images of children sitting seriously in class every afternoon, their pronunciation still clumsy yet full of effort, began to draw more attention. Without anyone quite noticing when it happened, the small classroom became a quiet source of light, spoken of with respect and affection. The news traveled farther when volunteer groups heard about Tiểu San's class. Some came after brief surveys, while others returned many times, as if it had become a habit. Each visit brought more liveliness to the classroom. Some people brought new notebooks, others prepared pens, rulers, and small chalkboards. There were groups who carefully purchased backpacks and desks sized to fit the children's small frames. These gifts were simple, yet filled with sincere care. Beyond school supplies, many benefactors also paid attention to the children's daily lives. Decent clothing, children's books, shoes, even milk and snacks were personally handed to those in especially difficult circumstances. For many children, it was the first time they had a properly fitting shirt or a brand new backpack to bring to class. The joy was clearly visible on their young faces, making the classroom feel warmer than ever. Tiểu San stood quietly, watching the scene with a heart full of emotion and gratitude. She understood that this care did more than ease material hardship, it also soothed the deep sense of inferiority that poverty had long placed on the children's shoulders. With better supplies, the children began coming to class more regularly and with greater confidence, no longer shrinking into corners as they once did. Gradually, the charity classroom was no longer a solitary effort by Tiểu San alone. It became a place where many kind hearts gathered, some contributing labor, others resources, and others words of encouragement. There were new boards so she could write lessons more clearly, a small reading corner where children could take turns borrowing books, and clean clothes that allowed them to walk into class neatly and confidently. On quiet afternoons, when the late sunlight slanted through the window, Tieu San watched the children diligently practicing their writing, her heart growing still with happiness. She realized that this small classroom was not only teaching letters, but also nurturing faith, the belief that these children deserved care, education, and the right to dream of a brighter future. And it was that realization that made Tieu San even more steadfast on the path she had chosen. The dream of a small classroom grew quietly in Tieu San's heart with each passing day. She no longer thought only about the cramped room she had now, where the children had to sit close together during every lesson, where rain meant leaks and sunshine brought stifling heat. Tieu San began to hope for more, that one day she could build a small school, spacious enough, filled with light, and furnished with proper desks and chairs, so the children could study in a decent and comfortable environment. That thought filled her with both excitement and anxiety. Tieu San knew well that the road ahead would not be easy. Funding, land, paperwork, everything lay far beyond the reach of an ordinary woman like her. Yet every time she saw the children studying intently, every time she heard them say, "I want to keep going to school," she reminded herself that she could not give up. She tried harder, saved every small amount she could, reached out proactively to those who had once supported the class, and bravely shared her dream with a fragile yet sincere hope. Throughout that time, Tieu San never realized that there was always someone quietly watching over her from behind. Hoai never spoke grand words or made promises beyond his means. He simply stayed by her side in silence, encouraging her when she was exhausted, reminding her to take care of her health, and believing in the path she had chosen. To Hoai, what Tieu San was doing did not need to be showcased, it only needed to be right, and done with a full heart. One evening, after Tieu San had fallen into a deep sleep following a long day, Hoai sat alone in front of his computer screen. Slowly, he wrote about her, about the small charity classroom, about the poor children holding a pencil for the first time, about a woman who quietly chose a difficult path simply because she did not want anyone to be left behind. The piece was not elaborate or polished, nor did it make loud appeals, it was just simple, honest words, much like Tieu San herself. Hoai shared the post with a very modest hope, that a few more people might learn about the story, and that, if luck allowed, Tieu San's class might receive a little more support. What he did not expect was that this seemingly simple story would touch the hearts of so many. In a short time, the post was shared repeatedly and attracted millions of views. Emotional comments poured in, some expressing admiration, others asking how they could help, and some offering to accompany the project for the long term. Donations began to flow in, not only in money but also in offers of legal assistance, construction help, and school design support. Some were willing to lend land, others volunteered their labor. When Tieu San learned of all this, she was left speechless with emotion. She had never imagined that her quiet journey could spread so far. Amid this stream of strangers filled with kindness, Tieu San turned to look at Hoai. He simply smiled softly, as he always did. Without a word, she understood that behind the dream of a small school for underprivileged children, there was always someone silently believing in her and supporting her with all his sincerity. The days that followed passed like a gentle dream, one Tieu San had never dared to imagine. Contributions for building the small school arrived one after another, volunteer groups donated cash, others contributed building materials, and some stepped forward to help with design and construction. Every message and every phone call carried a heartfelt intention, leaving Tieu San both deeply moved and anxious, afraid that she might not be strong enough to carry such profound trust. Then one morning, Tieu San unexpectedly received an invitation from a journalist. The story of her charity classroom and her dream of building a school was published in the newspaper as a beautiful act of everyday kindness. On the page, the image of a simple woman standing among children, with a gentle smile and eyes full of love, made Tieu San feel as though she were looking at someone else entirely. She had never thought that her quiet efforts would be known and cherished by so many. All these wonderful things arrived at once: support, trust, and widespread resonance, often leaving Tieu San dazed, hardly daring to believe they were real. There were evenings when she sat alone after class, gazing at the empty schoolyard as emotions welled up inside her. Happiness came softly, without noise, yet deep enough to bring tears to her eyes. Tieu San understood that this joy was not hers alone, but the result of many hearts choosing to believe together in kindness. Amid those busy days, Tieu San remained calm and humble. She reminded herself to be more careful and transparent, to be worthy of the trust everyone had placed in her. And in rare, fleeting moments when she allowed her heart to rest, Tieu San realized that happiness sometimes does not come from being praised, but from knowing that what one does, however small, has truly touched the lives of others. Behind her, Hai still stood quietly. He said little, simply watching Tieu San walk forward in the light, his heart filled with pride. To him, the moment Tieu San smiled in happiness, astonished by the goodness coming her way, was the clearest proof that every silent effort had been worth it. The day Tieu San first stood in front of a camera came to her very unexpectedly. That morning, just as the class had ended and the children were still lingering to put away desks and chairs, a journalist and a cameraman walked in. The camera was set down, the lights were switched on, and Tieu San suddenly felt her heart beating faster. She stood awkwardly for a moment, hands clasped together, feeling as though she had returned to her very first days of teaching, nervous and afraid she might say something wrong. When the questions began, Tieu San spoke very slowly. At times her voice trembled softly, and her eyes often drifted toward the children sitting under the classroom eaves. She did not talk about her own hardships, nor did she mention praise or public attention. She spoke only about the children, about the long walks they took each afternoon to get to class, about the joy of seeing a child write their own name for the first time, about their small, simple dream of studying in a school that did not leak when it rained and was not cramped or stifling. There was a moment when the journalist asked her why she had chosen this path. Tieu San was silent for a few seconds, then smiled gently and said, "I just think, if I can keep the children close to their letters for one more day, any day at all, then maybe their future can change just a little." That unadorned sentence, unplanned and without flourish, unexpectedly touched the hearts of many people. The interview clip was quickly shared on social media. In a short time, thousands, then hundreds of thousands of views appeared, along with countless emotional comments. Some called Tieu San the teacher of small dreams, others referred to her as the one who keeps letters alive for poor children, and some simply wrote, "A kind person in this world." Tieu San read those lines with a heart that felt both warm and overwhelmed. She had never imagined being called by such beautiful names. To her, she was still just a woman who stood in class every day, worrying about notebooks and meals for her students. Yet through the eyes of others, Tieu San slowly came to understand that quiet kindness can sometimes travel farther than one ever expects. From that time on, the dream of a small school in Tieu San's heart was no longer a vague thought that appeared and disappeared. It became clearer with each passing day, so vivid that at times, when she closed her eyes, she could see every small corner of the future school. She began to imagine simple classrooms filled with light, where sunlight could slip through the windows each morning. She thought of desks and chairs sized just right for the children, no longer makeshift or crowded together. She pictured a small yard out front, wide enough for the children to run and play during recess, safe enough that muddy ground would not be a worry whenever it rained. On some afternoons after class, when the children lingered and did not want to go home yet, Tieu San sat among them listening to their cheerful chatter. One small child looked up, eyes sparkling. "Teacher, will our school have trees?" The innocent question made Tieu San pause for a few seconds. She smiled and gently patted the child's head. Of course. There will be trees for shade, so you can sit underneath and study too. From that question, many small details began to take shape in her thoughts. She imagined a banyan tree or a flamboyant tree in the corner of the yard, where the children could shelter from sun or rain. She thought of a flag hanging at the gate, fluttering lightly in the morning breeze, nothing big or new, just raised with the pure, childlike pride of the children. The dream of the school was no longer distant. It slowly took on form, color, and sound, the chorus of voices reading lessons together, the laughter during recess, the lively footsteps running across the earthen yard. Tieu San realized that it was precisely the children's innocent questions that helped her see her path more clearly, step by step, making it more tangible and closer than ever before. After so many months of waiting, gathering each small hope from Tieu San's own efforts and the support of countless kind hearts, the charity school was finally completed. On the day it was prepared to open, the atmosphere there felt unusually quiet, as if it were waiting for the very first footsteps of the children. Tieu San stood at the school gate for a long time. Before her were rows of classrooms still fragrant with fresh paint, a small yard wide enough for the children to run and play, and windows open to gentle sunlight and breeze. She slowly stepped into each room, lightly touching the desks and the blackboard, as if to reassure herself that everything was real. In that moment, Tieu San thought of the children's future, lively lessons filled with the sound of reading aloud, recesses echoing with laughter, and tender dreams nurtured from this very place. A deep sense of happiness rose within her, both warm and overwhelming. Hai stood behind her, quietly observing. He could clearly see the joy shining in Tieu San's eyes, the pure joy of someone who had endured so much weariness to finally reach her first sweet reward. Hai understood that this school was built not only of bricks and mortar, but also of her perseverance and a heart full of love. He gently told Tieu San about his contribution, a donation of 100 million dong to purchase more desks, books, and learning equipment for the children. There was no boasting, no display, just something natural he felt he wanted to do. Tieu San was stunned. She turned to look at Hai, her eyes reddening as tears welled up without her noticing. In that moment, words seemed completely unnecessary. Tieu San tightly held Hai's hand, her own trembling slightly. She whispered her thanks, her voice small and breaking with emotion. Hai simply squeezed her hand softly in response, his gaze still gentle and calm, as if everything he had done was simply because he wanted her and the children to be happier. When she heard that the charity school had been completed and was ready to begin operating, Hai's mother could not hide her joy. She fell silent for a while, then smiled gently, the smile of someone who had witnessed Tieu San's quiet, persevering journey from the very first difficult days. A feeling both warm and proud rose in her heart. She looked at Tieu San with a completely different gaze than before, not just affection or sympathy, but genuine pride. A small, unassuming woman, without noise or show, yet capable of accomplishing something so meaningful and profound. To Hai's mother, Tieu San's ability to build this school was not merely the result of community support, but proof of her rare kindness and perseverance. She took Tieu San's hand, her voice slow yet sincere. She said that not everyone has the courage to choose such a difficult path, a path that brings no benefit to oneself, but seeks only the well-being of others. She believed that what Tieu San was doing would leave a lasting mark on the lives of many children, and in the hearts of those around them as well. In that moment, Tieu San was overcome with emotion. She bowed her head, polite and humble, yet her eyes shone with genuine happiness. The recognition and trust she received from Hai's mother meant more to her than any praise. It made Tieu San feel that her efforts had truly been seen, understood, and cherished with all sincerity.
Hello mọi người, cả mọi người đã xem hết video hôm nay của mình. Hy vọng rằng mọi người sẽ yêu thích những câu chuyện mà mình chia sẻ và câu chuyện mình kể hôm nay về cô gái Tiểu San. Thì sau khi Tiểu San đi học, cô đã quyết định mở một lớp học tình thương dành cho các em nghèo, và điều ấy đã lan tỏa khắp nơi khiến cho mọi người biết đến. Và cái hành động đẹp ấy đã khiến Tiểu San làm được một điều ý nghĩa, giúp cho các trẻ em nghèo được học và được biết được con chữ, khiến cho tương lai của các em sẽ sáng và mở rộng hơn. Và bên cạnh đó thì Hải vẫn luôn đồng hành cùng với Tiểu San và ủng hộ cô hết mình. Liệu rằng Tiểu San, cuộc sống của Tiểu San sẽ thay đổi như thế nào khi cô được mọi người biết đến? Và mọi người cùng đón xem vào những video tiếp theo để đồng hành cùng câu chuyện về Lý Tiểu San, và cũng như ủng hộ kênh của mình để mình có động lực làm nhiều video hơn nha. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video tiếp theo.